Hey, Brian.
Hey, Gaël, how are you?
Jesus, what a background. Where
Oh,
are you?
yeah, that's my background is actually that's Leadville. I'm in Boulder right now. I'm just in my basement in Boulder, but that's Leadville,
Oh.
Colorado.
Okay, so you're at home, and this is sort of a fake background, but not really.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I spent a lot of time in Leadville. That was shot off Mount Sherman, looking over. That's the end line for the Nolan's 14. So that's like the last 5 14ers on Nolan's 14, including, if you can see, the pointy one is Mount Elbert, the highest peak in Colorado.
What is Nolan 14?
Oh, sorry. Nolan 14 is a really, really difficult endurance running. It's not a race. It's a challenge, but it's like it's 14,000 peaks,
Jeez.
and then you it's about 100 miles long, 90 to 100 miles long, depending on how you do it. But it's mostly off trail. There's some trail, but you have to kind of do route finding and stuff like that. So it's a really hard kind of endurance challenge.
Okay. That's not because the only thing I know about Leadville is the Leadville 100. It's the 100 high that's like iconic that everybody knows about.
Yeah, there's that. But then like if you Google Nolan's 14 later, you'll find all these kind of crazy records about it. But it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Okay. Well, dude, thank you for connecting. So what I will do is I will leave this video. I'm recording it, if that's cool with you. I will leave it available for our viewers, but I mean, most of them are French. So even though on YouTube you can get translations like subtitles, but what I will do, I will come up with a write-up about what we're talking about. It will be all in French, but so I wanted to catch up with you because I mean, in my opinion, you're one of the few journalists who you do what I do, but you do it for here in the US and you follow it closely. I know you are very gear oriented. I want to actually know, but I'm sure you're also following what's happening with the athletes and the races, especially Americans. And so the first subject that I want to discuss with you is Jim Walmsley. I can't never say his name right. Can you say his name for me?
Jim Walmsley.
Okay, I wasn't that far. So the real question for me with Jim Walmsley is, can he win the UTMB? So hear me out. I respect the guy, and I know that's how he functions in the sense that he's very resilient, and he tries and he fails, and then he tries again until he succeeds. And that's how he became who he is today with Western States, right? He failed twice. And then now nobody can beat him, right? So UTMB, he failed more than twice, but he's in France for one more year, as far as I understand, and that's a lot of pressure now, because everybody's been waiting, but now more than ever, everybody knows that that's going to be his last summer living there, even though he can come back later. But competition is tough at UTMB, as always. He's not the only one who potentially can win. Now you have like new runners coming in. We saw it last year. So what is your take on this guy? Do you think he has what it takes to be the first American to win UTMB?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I think the first caveat is obviously the first American man to win UTMB, because
of course,
American women oddly have won many times.
Yes.
But yeah, so like Jim Walmsley is a fascinating character and athlete, and I think that you've hit it on the head pretty well in that he is a super determined, maybe almost obsessive person when it comes to approaching a goal, and I give him credit for that because he's got extraordinary athletic ability, but even the way he came into ultra running, he came in fully intent on being a champion when he was a good college runner, and but never showed the kind of all-world potential that he's displaying now. And that being said, he definitely struggled with various races and then figured it out. So Western State's a good example. Obviously, going off course didn't help him, but he came back and he won commandingly a couple times and set the record. And so UTMB is that next thing in ultra running that everyone wants to do, and it's kind of still kind of newish on the American kind of psyche, but not so much for the elite athletes, but because no American male has ever succeeded there that well. There's been a handful of people, top 5, let's say. it's still this treasure that someone wants to kind of capture. And I think Jim is fully capable of doing it. Absolutely. He's physically skilled enough. He's tenacious enough for sure. I think the big thing with UTMB is that it's not remotely easy. It's a very difficult test. And as you said, it's getting more popular and more competitive runners are coming into it. And I think that like we all see, I mean, I've been probably at the last 10 or so races to watch it and to cover it.
Yeah.
But I think
you've been out there for the past 10 years, every year?
Most of the last 10 years, almost every year since 2012 or so, and 2010 maybe. And like, I just find it, we see these athletes who do so well, Killian or Francois or Courtney, and they do it so well. And the way the video production of it looks so smooth and so easy. And yet each of those athletes during their trip around Mont Blanc have difficulties as well. You know, I talked to, for example, this year, talking to Killian and Jim separately afterwards, they both admitted like, yeah, they had low points, right? And like any ultra race, any race has a low point for an athlete, whether it's a New York City marathon, a marathon, but certainly because of the intense nature of that course and the severity of the climbs and everything else, and knowing where the competition is. I mean, often in that race, the leader might be 30 minutes ahead of some very good runners. Yeah. And 30 minutes isn't the end of the world in that race. But when you're also not feeling good and you're having a low point, then it kind of compounds itself, you know, quite a bit.
I know. But I agree with everything you're saying. I think my question is more, is Jim Walmsley a mountain goat, a mountain runner like Killian is, like Francois is?
Understood. Good point. Yeah.
He's super fast, but has he ever tried to go to Hardrock 100, which is kind of the similar terrain and race?
So he tried. He did try to do an unassisted FKT of the course in Hardrock once and came up short. He spends a lot of time in Silverton and running those trails.
He does.
But to your point, most of his skill set seems to be running fast. I mean, like, we know that he was a 401 miler, and so probably like close to the 342 for 1500, you know, on the track. And then we know that he's run a 215 marathon as recently as 2 years ago. So we know he's fast. Yeah. But certainly we know that that's like the least part of what it takes to win UTMB.
He almost broke the world record in 100K. He fell short, but he has that capacity.
Right. So that fast turnover on a flat or consistent surface is certainly one of his strengths. But I think that like I think he's certainly shown things that he's done that he can run well in the mountains. I think, you know, he ran the Grand Canyon FAQ cross and back, the rim to rim to rim, and that's not quite as technical as Hardrock, but it does have a lot of the severe climbs in it, you know.
Right, but the climate is pretty much the same.
True. Yeah,
something like that, like UTMB or Hardrock, you don't know what to expect, basically.
Yeah. So, but back to your point about UTMB, I think that, like, you know, that course can be deceiving because obviously sections are very runnable, and a lot of the trail is pretty smooth because it's so well hiked, you know, and like there's not like any technical stuff too much you have to go over. There's some sections, you know, but like a lot of that trail is pretty runnable. But I think what Jim messed up on this last time, and what he told me, his fueling was so bad. He got so eager after leaving Chamonix with a lead, or, you know, somewhere in there, that he didn't fuel as much, which of course is a constant challenge for ultra runners. Like we all know when we're running an ultra, if we say like, oh, I don't feel like eating, that's a sign that you're probably already you know, in the hole, right? And that's why we have pacers. That's why we have people at crew and everything else. And so, you know, we always give into our weaknesses, and like one of his might be like not fueling enough, you know, and
which he doesn't have at UTMB. You mentioned the pacer. We don't have that at UTMB.
Right. And like, so I talked to some of his people that met him at Chamonix, and like he didn't eat a lot of fuel, whereas I was watching the video, I saw Killian sit down and eat a lot of food, right? And like you just got to have those calories. And so combined with having lower calories and then going from Chamonix, there's still, I think, 3 or 4 4 climbs on the way out of there that are monster climbs. I mean, leaving Trient is a big climb, and leaving Valorcine, that last climb. I mean, it's such a difficult course that, like, yeah, you've got to have feeling. So I think combined with his eagerness to run a race that he's used to, fast and quick turnover, and to gap people, is not going to work in UTMB ever, right? If that's going to work, it's, I mean, like even Killian didn't take the lead until he left Valercine, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, we were never worried about Killian's. We Europeans, because we know Killian and he's been winning this race a lot. You know, the only concern with Killian was, since he had done Hardrock such a long time, you know, he didn't get much rest. We were just worried about that. But you know, the pace of Killian in the UTMB is like, okay, he's the master of the event. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
As are a lot of other really good seasoned mountain ultra runners. I mean, like certainly fueling and hydration are such big things, right? Like, do I think that like the Jim, you know, doesn't know? He's definitely aware of that. He's a great athlete, but I think that like certainly he's what's more important for Jim to win UTMB is certainly the mindset and the race strategy. You know, that is going to be key. I mean, like Zach Miller in 2016 went out way too fast, and that's how Zach races too.
Yeah,
I like Zach. I appreciate Zach's talents and his racing, but like when he went out, he went way so fast, and he had a lead. But again, like those last 3 climbs or 4 climbs are so devastating. You've got to be able to save something and also fuel well and everything else, and also hope for good luck too, I guess.
So you're confident that he will find a way, and I am kind of too confident, because he has done that in the past, Jim Walmsley, that he will find a way. Like, he has a year, basically a little less than a year, living in France, to find a way to maybe use the poles better and to become more of a mountain guy than a fast guy.
So I think he can do those things. Will he? I don't know. That'll be tough, because even if he does all those things better and he fuels better and he's in optimal form and he uses poles better and he runs more like a mountain runner, it's still going to be a very hard race, you know? And it's like, it's not about specifically whoever's there, whether Francois is there or whether Killian's there. There's always a chunk of people, like 4 or 5 people in the men's race, you know, are capable of winning, maybe more, right? Yeah. And it's how the race plays out. And so can he do those things? Absolutely. Is he talented enough? Absolutely. Will it happen? I don't know. I mean, like in the same way, winning the New York City Marathon is not easy either. And there's a dozen runners in there that are equally trained and fit and everything else, and only one emerges. And like even this year at the New York City Marathon, there was a Brazilian athlete that went way off the front, and you know, it didn't turn out that way. And like, so it's like, I think that's why we race, right? That's why it's exciting, and to watch athletics and track and field and triathlon. That's why we race, and that's why it's cool, because there's so many factors, right?
Yeah, I think one element also which is interesting for critics like us is that very few runners, and probably we believe Jim Walmsley can be one of them. Very few runners have won both fast 100-milers and mountain 100-milers. You know, and Killian is one of them.
Correct. Correct.
And Jim, I think, has the potential to become the elite of the elite and to be able to do that.
Yeah, but as you pointed out, I mean, like, it's certainly living in France is purposeful for that reason. He wants to be able to get that kind of training in, and he had a lot of good training last year, but still we saw some shortfalls in his execution. You know, and that's, you know, certainly living there through the winter and even being in the mountains and skiing more this winter, which I know he's going to do, will help, because it'll give him more of that mountain aesthetic, you know, that mountain mindset, you know? Yeah, for sure. So the other person that I want to talk about, and you mentioned her before in our conversation, is Courtney Dauwalter, because this woman, she's simply amazing to me. And I'm just wondering, why is she so strong? Why is she at such a high level compared to, like, she seems to be so much better than everybody else. And so I'm just wondering why. And I recently learned, because I didn't know, that she used to be a skier. Do you think that's why she's so good in the mountain? I think that certainly, well, she was a skier in Minnesota, and like Minnesota is a pretty low, flat kind of, you know, area relative to what Colorado is. And so Yeah, Courtney's a unique individual and brings a unique set of kind of skills and background, but more than anything else, I think is her attitude, which is a big thing. You know, she's not she's always very, very positive, and often laughing and everything else. But I don't mean to seem that she's always like, cheery and happy. She definitely understands what it means to be in the pain cave, and she's talked quite a bit about kind of making space and like expanding that, and she has a really good grasp on the mental aspects, the emotional aspects of ultra running, because we all, in running, in a marathon or in an ultra, it gets hard at some point, right? And that's a combination of a lot of things, fueling and training and the weather and everything else. But so much of how you survive through those hard spots is obviously keeping your mental acuity in check, and really being positive, but also making the right moves and everything else.
You're saying she's naturally a super positive person?
I know her as a friend and as an athlete, and she's super fun to be around. She's got a good sense of humor. She laughs a lot. She seems to be pretty light about things, and not that she doesn't take life seriously, because she does. Yeah. But she definitely has a kind of has a light vibe to her, like a light, easy vibe to her. And I think that's a big thing, because I think as we all approach challenges, both in running, in sport, and also in life, the more kind of anxiousness you put toward it, sometimes the worse it gets, right? And so I do think that both her outlook and her attitude are a big part of that, but also one level deeper than that is, again, how she manages what she knows is going to be a really difficult experience, because even in winning UTMB twice, she had, again, down moments and low moments and challenges with her nutrition on each occasion, and she overcame it, and her husband Kevin.
But I mean, those down moments, like you rightly said, so I'm cutting you, those down moments, everybody has them on the 100 mile, it's just a common thing. But she always manages to emerge winning. She always wins.
I mean, certainly physically, she's gifted as well. I've run with her in the mountains, and she's obviously, and I haven't seen any data on it, but she must have an enormous VO2 max and aerobic capacity. She's very strong, and and she trains considerably, like crazy mountain runs. I know there's like a 30-mile loop she does in Leadville that goes over 14,000 feet, and she's just it's like she does that as a couple times every now and then as a training run, and she's but again, every athlete trains, every athlete is good, so it's a component of all those things. She is a great athlete. She does have great aerobic capacity. She does have a penchant for running up high altitude. But she also has this great spirit and attitude and vibe about her too. And that's it's all that combination. It's always a combination of things that make an athlete great. No matter if it's a great football, soccer player, or
what's very interesting about her also, and it seems like it's a detail, and it kind of is, but she always wears those baggy shorts from Salomon. Yep. And I was talking to a French scientist who also ran UTMB and did top 10 finish. And he said, well, the interesting thing for me as a scientist about Courtney is I would love to see her legs, because I would love to see if she is a skinny type, or if she has this muscular mass, maybe coming from skiing, which will benefit her in mountain running. Because that's also something about Jim Walmsley that we haven't mentioned, but that some other runners have told me, is that he's very skinny. He's very thin, which works perfectly for speed. But in the mountain, when you have to have a backpack, when you don't have a pacer, those UTMB runners, winners, and if you look at Kilian, he's a short guy, but he's not a skinny dude. He has muscle mass. He's solid, right?
Yeah.
So about and I mean, that comment goes for Jim Walmsley also, but for Courtney, and that's why I was mentioning the skiing before, because skiing, I mean, I know because I skied all my childhood, and I also played soccer. I mean, dude, those sports, they create muscle mass as a youngster, and then you benefit from it later on.
I mean, like the thing I'll say about Courtney, she definitely has strong legs and the ability to use that musculature properly, right? It's like, and it's a two-part thing. I mean, like, she's definitely very strong, has very strong legs, but I think also understanding, how to be efficient and strong at the same time, going up high peaks or, high altitude is certainly part of it. When you're fatigued, obviously, efficiency is almost the better part of being able to use that muscle, and like to your point too. I mean, Jim is built more like a road runner, like a marathoner,
Absolutely.
And so certainly there's a difference there. And I think that, I agree that absolutely a course like UTMB or Hardrock is certainly, even though there's spots of open running, most of it is about strength running and really strong musculature, which Courtney definitely has.
Yeah. So another person that I want to mention to you, and I want to hear what you think of him, is a guy named Jamil Coury, who has a brand, Arrive Up High Running, that I'm sure you know. And I'm very, I don't know him personally. I mean, I've met him here and there, but I am very, very impressed with what he's done with Arrive Up High Running and all those amazing events that he's been able to set. And some of them have become quite famous. And he seems like unstoppable. Like in terms of event management, event creation, this guy to me is next level.
I absolutely agree. I know him a little bit. I mean, I've hung out with him. I've done some small projects with him back and forth, and I've talked to him and interviewed quite a bit. And like, he is honestly everything you just said for sure. To me, he captures the vibe of what trail ultra running is for everybody, right? Not just for the elite racers. And I think that comes from his experience of just being out there. But he also has the personality that like is very expressive and wants to share that with everybody. And so I think that comes through his events and his entire event team. It's like some of the content he creates or some of the content that he's been, trying to create through the years is really just to express all this joy and happiness and all these good things about ultra running. And like, that certainly comes through his events, and like people that go there have that vibe. And like, it's, of course, it's not just him, it's his entire team. It's his brother. But I think, he's expanded quite a bit, because he's got a good business. He's got a good business sense, and he's smart about it, and he understands from the micro level that like here's what trail running and ultra running is and what it does and what the community is, and like knowing that like at the bigger world there's more people coming into it because of the same reasons, like marathoners or triathletes are coming into it because of all those same things that he's so well captured. And he is, as much as anyone, has done a great job with creating that inclusiveness for anybody, and making them feel part of the action, right? And like that's like Javelina couldn't be a better example of that. But like any of his races you go to, you'll feel welcome. You'll feel like you have a future in trail running, and you'll leave with a great experience. And it has nothing to do with what time you finished in or how you struggled, because we all struggle. But it's like it's just like this vibe that he is so well captured. He's so good at it, and I think that like certainly in terms of like American race directors, for sure, he's one of the very top, and like certainly on an international stage too. I mean, like obviously different countries have different kind of vibes and everything else, but certainly Jamil has done so well with what he's done.
I mean, to me here in America, it's just like there's no, he's just top, very much. But what you said, I think it's very important. You mentioned, you used the word inclusive or inclusiveness. And that leads me to my last question, but I'm going to bring it up now. As a runner, I'm very annoyed. I was in the past, but it's getting worse, at how difficult it is, or impossible almost, to get a bib number for a few races, including Western States, Hardrock, UTMB, even now New York Marathon, it's a nightmare. And I think what Jamil has done, and I haven't researched it, so correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he has that system for any of his races. I mean, there's one race that is an invitation only, but that's for the elite. It's like in when they run around the track in Phoenix, right? And when they break world records and all of that. So guys like you and me are not invited, which is fine. But Javelina, you mentioned it. Javelina is probably one of his most iconic race. You can just register like that. You don't have to have points, running stones, a past in ultra running. There's no there's no lottery. Just go on web, you click, and that's how it used to be for UTMB. I don't know Western State and Hardrock. I don't know, but that's really annoy the shit out of me, this process.
I totally agree. And like I've been around Colorado for a long time, and I wasn't at the first Hardrock, but I've been to several of them, either just to watch or to watch friends or to whatever. And I have a big problem with Hardrock because, especially in terms of U.S. terms, like it's on public land and it's using public resources, but they made it kind of a private event out of it, you know, because they let all the past finishers keep getting in at a greater frequency than everyone else. So it really kind of made it a privatized event. I don't like that at all. And I think that, like, certainly pulling back from that, some of those races you mentioned are certainly kind of challenged by having small fields. I mean, Hardrock's only 140 or 145.
Right. So is Western States.
370 or so. Yeah. So I understand that point of it. But the problem is when then the races make all these things like, oh, if you were top 10 last year, you're in. If you've run 20 of them, you're in. Like, it definitely fills up more than it would if it was just an open registration. And that's frustrating. And the New York City Marathon is equally as challenging in different ways, even though there's 50,000 people in there. But I think that, like, for trail races, I definitely, you know, would appreciate and hope there would be more people following what Jamil's doing with Aravaipa. I think that, like, you know, having access to all is much better. Like, I understand what the World Series, UTMB World Series is doing, but it's only more complicated. You know, it's all.
Yeah, I agree.
It's impossible to get to Chamonix, you know, in a lot of those ways. And, like,
and I mean, I think they're trying to do it as the Ironman model. You know, it's impossible to get to Kona.
Right,
you know, unless you dedicate your entire lifestyle to doing Ironman. So I think that's what they want to do. You know, is it a good thing or a bad thing? I don't know. It's probably a good thing for the industry. I'm pretty sure. But
I mean, it creates this elite feeling or this unique feeling that everyone aspires to. But at some point, like, it's like it gets kind of tiring because if you can never get there and run it, do it, then it's not that great. You know, it's like
exactly.
I mean, like, the one nice thing that Ironman's done in the last 4 or 5 years is they created this legacy program that allowed more people that had been doing, you know, as age groupers, like, say 10 triathlons, a better chance to get in. And, like, part of that is because their field in Kona got smaller, and so they needed to fill it, right? That's not what's happening at Hardrock or at Western States, unfortunately, because those fields are always going to be filled up. But I really wish it was a more democratic approach to all these trail races, because to me, there's no reason, as much as I like some of the people that founded Hardrock and have run it a bunch, there's no reason for a lot of those guys that are 20-year starters or 30-year starters. A lot of them just, you know, start and they drop out at a certain point, and good for them for still being active and fit and part of the sport, but that doesn't really help the race that much. I mean, like, let new people in, open the doors to everybody. I really wish they would just one year say, you know, okay, maybe they let the top 5 finishers or the winners in, whatever else, maybe a few number, but just open up 138 slots to everybody else, you know?
Yeah. And same thing happened with UTMB. I mean, you and I have a different, like, almost opposite story with UTMB. I've been to UTMB the first 10 years, and then you went, and I've not been there for a while. But at the beginning, UTMB was very much open. You just register online. You know, you didn't need to show any proof of anything. So of course there was a lot of DNF, you know, and a lot of people that probably the race organizers had to go get in the mountains because they were getting themselves in trouble. So I understand that part, but today, as a mountain lover and as I mean, you can't go to UTMB anymore. It's just hell.
I agree. It's frustrating because it would be great to have more first timers experience that, you know, and, like,
I mean, the first time I ran UTMB, I had never done 100 miles.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
had never done 100 miles. You know, the longest race that I had done was not even 100K.
Yeah.
You know, and I just went on and I finished it. I mean, I was very far, but who cares, you know? And it was an amazing experience.
And I will say that one of the first things I learned from more the European vibe of ultra running, and specifically the French vibe, one of the things I really learned was, like, it was about that exploration, that personal exploration, and that adventure, right? For the everyman, right? Yeah. I think that ultra running here for so long was all focused on these fast people. And eventually more people came in, but, like, I think that, like, the first several times I went to any ultra in Europe, it was so much more, like, inclusive and accessible to everybody. And like, I mean, like, to me, I would see the joy of, like, you know, a random French runner just having a blast and really enjoying it with there's still commitment and there's still intensity, but it's a different kind of feeling. It's about that personal exploration, which I think is such a big part of what it should be in the sport and how it should grow.
Yeah, because that's what gets you to it. Then you do your first 100K, and you had never done 100K before, and you're like, Jesus, man, I'm capable of doing this. Was an amazing experience. Let me do it again.
Yep.
It's not so much the time. I mean, who cares? Like, how many people can really do like good times? There's like nobody, basically.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So okay, it's very interesting that you as an American, you can say that about your races, like Western State and Hardrock. Because me as a European, I'm like, I want to do those races, but like, I'm not gonna go through the hassle of trying to qualify and then the lottery shit. This is like a nightmare. I don't even want to do it.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I kind of first sensed that, like that French sense of adventure when the Raid Gauloise got started,
Yes.
And Gerard Fustel, I mean, he had this great thing for like, taking initially French people and then obviously international and going to some remote place around the world and having this experience, an experience of adventure, and it was certainly you wanted to reach the finish line, but it wasn't about necessarily getting there as fast as it was about the experience with teammates and all that stuff. And so that kind of carried over into what my understanding of like European and French ultra running were. And I really, that's the vibe about the sport I love. Yeah. And so often is missing, or just not as highlighted here. Maybe it's not missing, but it's like so much of the highlight in the US is still about these fast runners. And like, that's great. They're great athletes, but for 90% of the field, it's just this experience,
98% of the field.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So hang on, I'm opening a bracket here. Have you ever been to the Marathon des Sables?
I have not. No, I'd always wanted to do that. I've never been able to do that. I've had a lot of friends from the US and a few international friends who have done it. I just find it fascinating.
Yeah, man, because this is exactly what we're talking about. It's a guy who one day when he was a young journalist and he decided to cross the Sahara, the founder of the race, and he was pulling a cart full of water.
Yeah.
And that's how the race started. I'm doing it. It's going to be my ninth.
I know you've done a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's an amazing, and it's exactly that. It's regular people who don't come there for timings and just to experience the survival in the desert for a week.
I love that. I love that idea for sure.
Dude, so you should come.
We should have that conversation offline, but yeah, for sure. I'd love to.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 7 more minutes, but then I can send you another link and we can do another 40 minutes if that's cool with you. So one other thing that it's starting to upset me, even though I don't pay for my running shoes, like you, I imagine we get free gear for reviewing and everything, is the price of the shoes. So I understand that maybe carbon shoes, because of whatever is inside it, brands have decided that they were going to cost no less than $200. I'm like, okay, fine. It's a technology, I can accept that, but now regular running shoes, like it's an example. I don't want to just focus on them, but the ASICS Gel Nimbus, for example, I just got it and I just Googled it. I was like, well, this is an okay shoe. This is a good shoe, but how much does it cost? It's $160. This is outrageous. Like, I think it's very expensive. And I think there's a trend. And the On models right now, I mean, they're like, you don't even have carbon in it. And it's more than $150. And I'm like, this is becoming to be super expensive. So I don't know if I'm being weird about this, but I feel it's a trend and I don't like it.
No, I totally agree. I think that, it kind of started with like a brand like Newton that all of a sudden had $175 shoes, like in 2010, when every other shoe was still like much lower. Like the high end back then was like 130, and and then what the next thing went from there obviously was a lot of other shoes kind of creeped up in price, and not necessarily better running shoes, but we all know there was like a kind of like extras put on running shoes that weren't that great. But like the next biggest thing was the carbon fiber shoes, the Nike Vaporflies. And then since then,
Newton, sorry, I'm just cutting you. Newton, that in the end didn't serve them well because Newton today is almost dead. Nobody wears Newton anymore. Right.
But so from there, obviously, when the carbon fiber shoes came out, it both like kind of created this top barrier. Like, well, if Nike's selling all these shoes for $270, $250, $275, other brands certainly pegged their own spot. And then unfortunately, it created like a higher kind of ceiling for everyday trainers, which are, some of the everyday trainers are $160 to $180,
Exactly.
And the technology is not necessarily different. I mean, there's different materials, there's newer foams, but some of those newer foams are actually cheaper to make than the EVA was, I mean, like there's certainly been a markup for sure. And I think shoe brands have used it for a reason to scale these prices. And then there's a brand like Norda that puts out like shoes that are in the $400 range, and in Speedland, and I'm friends with the guys at Speedland, and they're a different model because they only promote or produce a tiny number of models with kind of all high-end materials, but their first two shoes were $375 a piece, and like,
what's the name of that brand again?
It's called Speedland.
Where is it from? Here?
They're out in Portland, Oregon.
Okay, $400.
$375 for their shoes, and then their new shoe is going to be $275, which I think their new shoe is going to be really, really good. But like the question is like, what price do you pay for what is a good running shoe? Because I was telling somebody yesterday, there's a good running shoe from Brooks. The Brooks Launch is a $100 shoe. And I still run a lot of miles in that because it's a good shoe.
Yeah.
And so it kind of depends on like, unfortunately the market of all things has skyrocketed in different levels. I mean, like, cell phones cost so much money, right? And everything is scaled.
Yeah, but dude, I have no issue paying $1,000 for my iPhone because this is my life right there.
True. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, fine, maybe I'm getting ripped off by Apple, but I can live with it, But you're making a good point. With $100 shoe, people like you and I, we run as good as with $200 shoe. I'm not talking carbon. This is a different space. But I think brands have taken advantage of that carbon rise in terms of prices and be like, oh, there are people who are willing to pay $200 and $250 for a Nike shoe. Let's get on that trend. And yeah, that's just a bit.
Unfortunately, it's definitely changed the market. It's changed kind of what the market is willing to pay or what they expect to pay, and maybe falsely so, because we know there's all these new runners that have come in, especially even after the pandemic. And like if you watch, if you go to any marathon now, it's not only the elite, 20% up front. So the fast athletes, the age group athletes, it's everybody else that are wearing these. Yeah. I'm not sure there's that as much benefit for all those athletes, but they feel they have to buy those, and like, whereas honestly, if you and I were going to start a local running group and say, we'll get first time runners together, we could get them in $100 shoes that would last them 6 or 8 months, and they could get healthy and fit and finish a race. And that's still, to me, what the most important part of the sport is,
Yeah, because carbon is not even for everybody. Let's make that clear.
Agreed.
Yeah, you can even get
it's a different world.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, can I send you another link?
Well, you can, but actually,
tell me. We can stop here.
We can stop here, but we can start. I have to meet my brother. I didn't expect this, but I have to meet my brother for a bit. So I can meet like an hour from now. Does that work? Or
if you want, or we can do it tomorrow or next week.
No, let's. Let's do it like in about an hour from now.
Okay, Just send me an email whenever you're ready.
Okay, I'm happy to keep talking, and I love conversations like this. So
thank you.
We'll definitely connect again.
All right, man. See you in an hour.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep. Bye.